Hello, Andrew here again, and this is episode 166. And we're continuing in the Woe to You to the Scribes and Pharisees by Jesus. We're in Holy Week, he's in the temple, and today we're at Matthew chapter 23, verses 16 to 22. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, "Whoever swears by the sanctuary is bound by nothing, but whoever swears by the gold of the sanctuary is bound by the oath. You blind fools! For which is greater, the gold or the sanctuary that has made the gold sacred?" And you say, "Whoever swears by the altar is bound by nothing, but whoever swears by the gift that is on the altar is bound by the oath." How blind you are! For which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? So whoever swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. And whoever swears by the sanctuary swears by it and by the one who dwells in it. And whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by the one who is seated upon it. This is a kind of indicator that we live in a very different world, or it seems to me that we do. I mean, the first thing I'm struggling with is who swears oaths anymore, except when you're in court. More specifically, who swears by anything? Usually, we make a commitment and we keep it, or we don't keep it. We make a promise and keep it, or we don't keep it. There's a sense that Jesus' advice to not swear by anything, but simply let your yes be yes and your no be no, is today quite widely practiced. Though we don't always keep our promises and commitments, but we'll get to that. The same principle applies. Do we say yes and then do no? Do we make promises and fail to deliver on them? I went searching for a little bit more wisdom on this text through, and I went back to William Barclay. I do want to commend him to you. He did a daily study Bible series of both the Old and the New Testament. I went online and discovered that you can buy them new. I mean, they're eye-wateringly expensive because they're quite a set. But I picked up a second-hand set quite some years ago, and they're still around. And they're invaluable. They are enormously readable and interesting. One of the things about Barclay is he often gives a number of options as to how something can be understood. And you can get to pick which one you like. You might not like any of them. You might like all of them. But there's a breadth, and it's not technical, highly accessible. So anyway, I just would commend William Barclay's daily study Bible series to you. He suggests that the Scribes and Pharisees had become experts in wording oaths in such a way as to give themselves out clauses. They'd concocted an elaborate set of rules that allowed them to decide which oaths could be disregarded and which absolutely had to be kept. And one of the things he suggests is that if the name of God is included in an oath, that's one that has to be kept. Apparently they'd made a kind of art form out of it. In this determination to start out with less than good faith, because that's what it is, Jesus is pinging them. Eugene Peterson, in The Message, calls the practice in a contemporary way. I think he actually puts it beautifully. When you look at the illustrations that Jesus uses, Peterson doesn't even attempt to go there, but he kind of puts the thing in a really up-to-date way. So this is The Message, Matthew 23 verses 16 to 22. You're hopeless. What arrogant stupidity. You say, If someone makes a promise with his fingers crossed, that's nothing. But if he swears it with his hand on the Bible, that's serious. What ignorance. Does the leather on the Bible carry more weight than the skin on your hands? What about this piece of trivia? If you shake hands on a promise, that's nothing. But if you raise your hand to God as your witness, that God is your witness, that's serious. What ridiculous hair splitting. What difference does it make whether you shake hands or raise hands? A promise is a promise. What difference does it make if you make a promise inside or outside a house of worship? A promise is a promise. God is present, watching and holding you to account, regardless. And I think he's nailed it. That's the whole point. When we set out to deceive, to duck our responsibilities, who are we kidding? God knows, and I know. And that's the thing I often find when I'm tempted in a certain direction, is that in the end, there's two who know. God knows, and I know. We both know if what I said's not true, or I'm tempted to fudge things. We both know. Gotta live with that. Gotta live with that. There's no getting past these two facts. So what do we do when we find ourselves unable to fulfill a promise? It may be that we no longer have the resources to meet the commitments that we've made. If we have entered into a legal contract, there will be remedies for the other party, and we will likely suffer some loss. If it's a commitment or promise that we've made, what are we to do? Well, surely the first thing to do is to approach the person is confess. I made this commitment, I made this promise. I'm sorry. This is what's happened. And seek grace and understanding. Sometimes alternative arrangements may be able to be negotiated. Being direct, open, and a spirit of humility will hopefully go a long way. In the end, though, we don't want to get a reputation for being unreliable or for ducking our responsibilities simply because we don't feel like it. Actually, that's not okay. Keeping to our commitments and keeping our promises is important. And it's important not just to us. It's important to those with whom we are in relationship, because the future of those relationships actually depends upon it. In the end, we're back to the principle that Jesus espouses so often. Those who can be trusted with small things can ultimately be trusted with big things. We tend to see things the other way around. We tend to think so often that the small things don't really matter. It's the big things that matter. Jesus says no. It starts with the little things. The little commitments that you make. The little commitments that you make to yourself, to God. The little commitments that you make to others. If we can show ourselves to be trustworthy when it doesn't seem to matter, why should anybody be willing to trust us when important things might be riding on our doing what we will say? So once again, we're back to this theme. The little things matter because they point to character. And at the centre of this is the question of trustworthiness. We're in election season. The whole world seems to be in election season. And I come back to this being a kind of key issue. You know, when you're looking at casting your votes, that's the question. Who are the people who have lived with a measure and continue to live with a measure of integrity? Anyway, in the closing words of one of my favourite podcasters, it's just a thought. God bless you.